We are just 4 days away from Election Day.
That's right, and millions of Americans have already cast their ballots in this year's race. President Biden and former President Trump held dueling rallies yesterday in an effort to motivate last-minute voters to head to the polls. President Biden urged Americans to get out and vote in an effort to secure democracy. Former President Trump urged supporters to question the election's integrity and teased a new run for the White House. CBS News political director Finn Gomez joins us now here in Studio 57 with more. Finn,
so cool to be in the studio.
So
let me just say.
Great to have you.
It's so much bigger than this tiny little Washington studio. This is very cool.
Well, and we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
so
4 days.
4 days. I can't believe it. Let's start with former President Trump because he was campaigning on behalf of candidates, Republican candidates in Iowa on Thursday, and he made headlines when he said this. Let's listen to some of that.
I ran twice. I won twice. And did much better the second time than I did the first, getting millions more votes in 2020 than I got in 2016, and likewise, getting more votes than any sitting president in the history of our country by far. And now, in order to make our country successful and safe and glorious, I will very, very, very probably do it again, okay? Very, very, very probably.
So, Finn, of course, the fact remains that Joe Biden won the popular vote by a 4-point margin. That being said, what do we know about the possibility of an announcement from former President Trump and the timing of a possible announcement?
Well, CBS has learned that, according to 3 Trump advisors, that the former president is considering announcing as soon as November 14th, though that is not a date that's set in stone. It could come in the following weeks after the midterm elections, which, of course, are from 4 days, November 8th. We can report that he's been calling around. He's been calling his network. He's been calling advisors, associates, and donors to sort of weigh these possible options. And we could also confirm that he's having an event, an election night event at Mar-a-Lago on November 8th, according to sources who spoke to me and senior White House producer Arden Farhi. So, it's something that in part could freeze the Republican field, the potential Republican field, if you will. Of course, there's a couple of people vying, as you know, including his former Vice President Mike Pence and, of course, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who's being very active this weekend as well.
Well, with this potential looming announcement, and as he said, very, very probably do it again, seems like it's coming. How could that impact voters who have not voted yet?
Well, I think that, it's something that some congressional Republicans, including the potential next Speaker of the House, if Republicans do win the House back, Kevin McCarthy, has tried to tell Trump not to jump in early, not to take away the attention, the focus from the midterms. I think the Democrats have really wanted, in a lot of ways, for this election to be framed around Donald Trump and being a referendum on Donald Trump. So this sort of helps them, but it's also 4 days out. This is like, millions of people have already voted. A lot of minds have already been decided according to the later surveys. So we'll see.
So I want to ask you about Pennsylvania. All eyes on Pennsylvania.
Keystone State.
Such a battleground state.
Huge.
So John Fetterman's campaign is already capitalizing on a late endorsement from none other than Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah.
Let's listen to some of that.
I said it was up to the citizens of Pennsylvania, and of course, but I will tell you all this, if I lived in Pennsylvania, I would have already cast my vote for John Fetterman for many reasons.
It's so interesting because the dynamic here is fascinating. The background of Oprah helping to launch the career of Fetterman's Republican challenger, Dr. Mehmet Oz. How significant is this endorsement? Is it expected to pull weight with voters in the Keystone State?
Well, it's Oprah Winfrey. I mean, she's got a big name, and and she can have a big pull. Especially, these comments were said as part of her initiative that she has to advocate and to motivate African American voters to come out and vote. And she not only endorsed John Fetterman, but she also endorsed like an array of different Democratic candidates across the Senate landscape, including Val Demings in Florida, Sherry Beasley in North Carolina, and also and others across the Senate landscape. So it could have an impact, and it could drive out some of the votes that Fetterman would need, especially in places like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and which is 4 days away. Every vote counts, and most polls show that it's a very tight race.
And there are so many other races that are playing out in Pennsylvania alone. Kind of break it down for us and tell us what you're looking at and what you're expecting the outcome.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of races. The other one that's really gotten a lot of attention has been the gubernatorial race, of course, between Doug Mastriano and Josh Shapiro. Doug Mastriano has been somewhat of a controversial Republican candidate who's running this Christian nationalist platform, while Josh Shapiro has been, there are even talks of him in the Democratic Party as a future potential presidential aspirant if he does win. And most polls show that he's well ahead. I think there was one poll that showed he was out by double digits over Mastriano. So, I mean, it's an interesting race and a lot of national dynamics. And a lot of these big themes that we've been seeing the entire midterm cycle are playing out in the Keystone State.
It's going to be fascinating to see what strategies are actually working and resonating with voters, because as you point out, I mean, it really has been pretty brutal, tough politics.
Especially in Arizona, where Carrie Lake, she's not been using the traditional means to campaign, and it's neck and neck.
And she has, but she does, according to sources that have in that state, in the Grand Canyon state, Carrie Lake has a lot of momentum. You're seeing that in the polls as well. And that's the thing, that she could pull it off. And, it's some in the Trump world are already saying that she could be a potential VP shortlister for if Donald Trump secures the nomination again. A lot of ifs before we get there.
November 14th,
we got a massive
You're going to
midterm.
be busy November 14th as well.
Yes, I'm going to be busy. I feel like I'm busy every day now.
Get some sleep
every
tonight.
second.
Finn Gomez, thank you so much.
So good to see you, Finn.